You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome. My name is Frank Ambrosio. I'm the co-director of the My Dante project at Georgetown University. It's my great pleasure today to welcome you to a reading of Inferno, the first canticle of Dante's Divine Comedy. It's voiced by Danny Fitzpatrick, and he's reading his own translation of the poem, which he recently completed in commemoration of the 700th anniversary of Dante's death in 1321. Poetry is meant to be spoken and heard. As Danny speaks, listen for the simplicity and economy of the English words and rhythms which Danny has discovered at work in Dante's native Italian. In their music and textures, we hear the primal power with which they break forth from silence, revealing the whole world, together with all of us, the living and the dead. So let's join Danny Fitzpatrick now on Dante's journey.
Hello and welcome back to the Dante in a Year podcast. My name is Danny Fitzpatrick. Last time, in Canto XII, we watched as Dante and Virgil met the centaurs. One of them, Nessus, guided the heroes over the river of boiling blood in which are steeped those who are violent to others. Today, in Canto XIII, we pass into the wood of suicides, where those who are violent to themselves are punished. Canto XIII. Nessus still had not arrived when we sent ourselves into a wood that none had marked by any path. No verdant fronds, but of dull color. No straight limbs, but knotted and twisted. There were no apples, but toxic branches. No harsher thickets enfold those savage beasts that bear hate to the cultivated places between Cesena and Corneto. Here the horrid harpies make their nests, who hunted the Trojans from the Strophides with dour pronouncements of a future damned. They have wide wings, and human necks and faces, feet with claws, and great feathered undersides. They make laments in the strange trees. And the good master began to speak to me. Before you enter further, know you're in the second gyre, and will be till you see the horrible sand. But look well, for you will see things that tear your faith in my warning. I heard woes drawn out on every side, and saw no person that might make them, so that, all confused, I held back. I believe he thought that I thought that all the voices among those branches issued from people who'd hidden there. So my master said, if you wrench a little bough from one of these plants, the thoughts you bear will all be pruned. So I put out my hand a bit and culled a little branch from a big blackthorn, and its trunk cried, "Why do you break me?" Then brown blood flowed from it, and it began again to cry, "Why do you shear me? Are you a spirit without any pity? We were men, and now we are made thorns. Your hand might well have been more gentle if we'd been souls of serpents." As from a green stick that smolders from one end, while the other moans and squeaks with wind that makes its way, so from the ripped splinter came together words and blood. Wherefore I let the head fall, and stood as a man afraid. If he could have first believed, responded my sage, O wounded soul, that he seen solely in my rhyme, he would not have stretched his hand to you. But this incredible thing made me lead him on to that same deed that weighs on me. But tell him who you were, so that in place of any amends, he might refresh your fame in the world above, where he is licensed to return. And the trunk, you lure me with such sweet words that I cannot be silent, and don't be burdened if I invite myself to reason a little. I am he who held both keys of the heart of Frederick, and could turn them, locking and unlocking, so smoothly that I held his secret from almost everyone. I so bore faith to that glorious office that I lost sleep and then my pulse. The meretrix who never tore her cupid eyes from Caesar's hospitality, the common death and vice of the courts, inflamed all hearts against me. And they inflamed Augustus so that happy honor turned to sad losses. My soul in disdainful taste, thinking in death to flee disdain, made me unjust against my own self. By the new roots of this tree I adjure you that I never broke faith with my Lord, who so deserved honor. And if either of you return to the world, strengthen my memory, which lies still in the fault that envy gave it. He waited a bit, and then the poet said to me, As he is silent, lose no time, but speak and question him further if it please you. So I to him, Ask him more of what you think would satisfy me, for I cannot, such pity fills me. So he started again. If this man would do that freely which your speech prays, imprisoned spirit, may it yet please you to tell us how the souls are lashed to these knuckled thorns, and tell us, if you're able, if any is ever unfurled from these limbs. So the trunk breathed hard, and then that wind was turned to such a voice. Briefly I'll respond to you. When the wild soul departs from the body by unveiling itself of the same, Minos commands it to the seventh mouth. It falls into the wood in no selected part, but where the bow of fortune sends it, it seeds like a grain of spelt. It surges into a shoot and into a woody plant. The harpies, then feeding of its foliage, give pain and a window to that pain. As the others will come for our spoils, but not to be reclothed as the others, for it's no justice to have that we took from ourselves. We will drag it here, and in the misty wood will our bodies be hung, each on the thorn of its molested shade. We were still attending to that trunk, believing it would tell us more, when we were startled by rumor, as when he that comes to hear the dogs and the rustling branches knows the hog and the hunt are at his post. And behold, two from the left hand, nude and scratched, flying so hard that they broke straight across the wood. The one ahead, Now run, run, death! And the other, who seemed too slow, cried, Lano, no such fury bore your legs at the jousts of Topo. And then, perhaps for failing breath, he made a group of himself and of a bush. Behind them the wood was full of black dogs, ravenous and coursing like hounds let free of the chain. To that miserable one they put their teeth, and ripped him piece from piece. Then they bore off those dolorous limbs. Then my leader pressed my hand, and led me to the bush that cried from the bloody ruptures in vain. O Jacopo, it said, of Sant'Andrea, what good did it do you to make me a screen? Why do I bear the fault of your guilty life? When the master stepped above it, he said, Who were you that through so many points suffuse your sorrowful words with blood? And he to us, O souls who've joined to see the shameless mutilation that's disjoined me from my limbs, recollect them at the foot of this sad bush. I was of the city that changed the Baptist for its first patron, and for this he will ever make her suffer with his art. And if it were not that in the passage of the Arno yet remains a little vestige of him, those citizens that then refounded it upon the cinders that remained of Attila would have labored vainly. I made myself a gibbet of my house. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Dante in a Year podcast. See you next time for Dante's Inferno, Canto 14.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.